Kia ora and welcome everyone. My name is Rick Tolman. I am the Vice President of Global Digital Demand at Pluralsight. And I'm very happy to be joining you today for this Demand Gen Summit. I'm excited to be able to share with you some tips and tricks and insights that I've learned over the years in creating what I call a digital demand engine. This is something that, as I love meeting with other co-workers, employees, luminaries, and counterparts of the industry. And for me, one of the more benefits is learning from each other, is giving a peek under the hood of how we operate and how I've run my demand engines over the years. And so today I'm very grateful to be able to spend some time with you discussing that as well. Again, my name is Rick Tolman. I oversee our Global Digital Demand at Pluralsight. I'm also the chairman of the board of Utah Polynesian Professionals, which is a group that is committed to workforce representation for underrepresented minorities, specifically those from Asia Pacific in the islands of Hawaii, Samoa, Fiji, Tonga, and New Zealand. Grateful to be able to share some time with you today to talk about the importance of not only what we're doing, especially given the environment that we work in today, where a large part of our virtual task force is still working from home, and how do we make sure that we can deliver on the demands that we have from our company. For me, one of the greatest opportunities that we have from a digital perspective is being able to truly deliver what our goals are set forth to do in a world that you don't necessarily have the face-to-face elements of business anymore. And so it's actually really, for me, it's really important to understand how do we do this, where especially in the marketing landscape today, you've got demand generation and attribution efforts are more challenging than ever. It's hard to find a true percentage of people that are working from home versus those that are working in office and other environments, where you have many companies such as my own and the tech companies that have announced that they'll be fully remote till the end of the year and some even into the next year. So it's safe to assume then that as has occurred, as much of the B2B business will be conducted digitally. So what does that mean for demand generation? At the beginning of coronavirus in the lockdown in March, content consumption was up across the board. Many external channels had been eliminated though. The face-to-face channels, some of the critical ones, such as field marketing, had to take a step back given the social distancing requirements. Today, many brands, and the brands that I've worked with for many years, both in Silicon Valley, have turned to a digital first model, which means there's a lot of content, but there is not enough time for overtaxed audience to consume it all. So what do we need to do for this? This really then has us focus on what are we producing from a digital perspective and a demand generation perspective that ultimately drives quality leads to our sales reps, and that those sales reps can convert into opportunities, pipeline, and ultimately close revenue. And so it puts a hyper focus on those critical dollars that we have today as demand generation leaders. Where do we apply those dollars? How do we deliver the highest ROI against that as well? And so what I'm excited to share with you is looking at that landscape. What does the raceway look like for us? Because again, I'm going to use the analogy here as our demand engine is a critical part of how the overall company car, the overall sports car that we hope to build, that takes us to the finish line. So what we're going to cover today is essentially that, is how do we build a high performing, let's call it a V8, 8-cylinder demand engine, which I know isn't for most, is they'd like to see a little bit more on the cylinder side. But for me, it's really about performance. It's about cost. It's about being able to use what you have within your business to be able to drive high performance. And so as we step through this, things we're going to be talking about include codifying the vehicle. It's understanding the landscape that you're working with. What is your vehicle producing? What's the overall schematics and layouts for that? 2, of high importance, obviously, is onboard diagnostics. Whether in a racing situation or in business, really having your optics dialed in to understand where there's needed improvements, also where you have the capability to be able to drive more performance, and where dollars are ultimately being turned into pipeline and revenue. I'm going to discuss the third thing here is pit crew roles, understanding the roles that we play both within our demand generation teams, within our sales teams, and the rest of the greater ecosystem that helps deliver pipeline. Also, we'll talk about throughput capacity, truly understanding what the levers are to tune your car and your engine to higher performance. Alignment in that is also key. We'll discuss that as well, whether it's alignment within marketing and also within sales. And then basically number 6 we have here is mechanics. It's the fundamentals. What can we be doing to make sure that at a base level, we're producing the right results? Number 7 is my analogy for using spotters, which essentially are looking at it from an external analyst perspective, using data and outside data to help. These aren't unique problems we're trying to solve for ourselves, so leverage the collective community and learnings of others to be able to help you as well. And the last part was something personal for me, is talking about how do we create diverse teams and leverage diversity within our teams and also within the company to be able to truly address this global market. Okay, so let's jump into this. First, though, I want to have a little brain tease for you, something to set the stage for this discussion. This is a quote from a very prominent philosopher. Some would even say it's someone that's contributed to society and the overall evolution of man, and is one of the greatest philosophers and poets we've ever had. And the quote is simply this, and this is going to have a tie directly to what we talk about today. He says this: life's ill, don't get it pretzeled. I can't show you, but I'll leave a stencil. I'm talking about what matters, not figures. I'm pointing at the moon and you're looking at my finger. I'm going to give a second to pause and really think deeply about this, going back into your high school and college history courses, your philosophy courses. What great poet and philosopher said this? And I know many of you know exactly who it is. Yes, you're correct. It is Ghostface Killer from the Wu-Tang Clan. Now, this is an important one too, because what we're talking about today is essentially you're going to hear a lot in the industry about what do we need to be doing to produce more pipeline. Essentially, that is, you're talking about what matters, but really what figures. If you're pointing at the moon and you're telling someone, here's what we're looking at, but they're looking at your finger, we have to understand what truly is what moves the needle for us in terms of generating real pipeline at the cost that we need it to and at the speed and velocity we need it to. Ghostface Killer, thank you for setting the stage. Let's jump right into it. Point number 1, codify the vehicle. Now, this is an example of basically understanding end-to-end. Whenever I come into a company for the first time, whether it's a marketing organization that's brand new, whether it's a marketing organization that's existed for several years, the first thing that I love to do is be able to, number 1, is go map end-to-end our entire lead to revenue framework. I need to be able to understand essentially how are those leads being tagged, how they're being captured, how are they being passed off to each different step in the MarTech stack, and also how are we actually monitoring that as well. One of the things to do is it's very simple to be able to chart out what that lead to revenue framework looks like and looking at every single touch point. Essentially consider it like a baton handoff, making sure these leads are being handed off correctly at every phase of that race. And then one of the first things I like to do as well is conduct a smoke test, where you essentially start putting in data and leads to be able to see where are the cracks, where does the lead information fall out. If you have, for example, Adobe's recognizing 1,000 contacts that came in through the website, and the handoff to Marketo only recognizes 990. So trying to build this simple, basic early warning systems that help you understand, are these leads making it across in a conducive fashion? Because the reality is, even having some of the best laid marketing programs, digital advertising, if your funnel is compromised, if that lead to revenue framework has fallouts, then you're missing not only the actual volume of those leads, but you're missing the quantifiable data, and you're sending signals back to your optimization teams that are false because leads are falling out of the system. And so being able to, number 1, understand that ecosystem, map it out, even if it's a raw, ugly form, build and map out that ecosystem, conduct smoke tests, see where there's cracks showing, and then be able to formalize a constitution, which is essentially build early warning systems, look at and build both manual and automated if you can, understand where you can drive and really truly make sure every lead is being tagged correctly, processed correctly, handed off correctly as well. So that's a huge one to begin with, because then essentially now we're setting the stage. Now we have the baseline where we understand and we set the racetrack. We know the actual course as it's designed. And then for us now, we have the ability to actually go tune a car and an engine that can accelerate in this environment. Key to that though, even before, people always ask me too, if they're building a new company, if it's digital marketing, if it's in demand marketing, what are your first couple of hires? And I'll say this, in the last couple of companies that I've been with, it's 100% one of the first hires I go after. It's a business analyst. It's as I can stand up different programs, both the digital side, build channel managers and program managers, having an analyst that actually can quantify the value of what you're delivering and understand and tweak and be able to optimize how you're structuring and allocating your spend that is a critical role. And so essentially with that too, what we're talking about is being able to have those diagnostics, build the optics to be able to understand what you're working with. And it starts very essentially with being able to build a top-down approach, which is essentially what are the targets you're going after? What are the objectives? Are these revenue objectives? Understanding the revenue objectives, how those translate into pipeline, then into leads. Now, essential to that is that we call that the top-down version, where you're starting with the company targets. The bottoms-up will be understanding from a channel perspective. If you input $1 into, let's say, paid search, what is that output in terms of pipeline? What is that output in terms of revenue? So you use both approaches, and then hopefully they'll be able to come close and together in the middle, where you're able to connect those two. And even if they're slightly off, directionally they should be both pointing towards each other, where you have a specific high-level revenue target, but then you can map that with how you input your spend in your channels, that directionally those two will meet in the middle. Second to that too is obviously understanding from an optics standpoint, what are the model assumptions, and in this case, interstage conversion rates, such as your marketing accepted lead to sales accepted lead, or sales accepted lead to your sales pipeline. Understanding those conversion rates and being able to set a model to that so that you can truly, again, understand each phase and each handoff, each baton handoff in the funnel. You understand exactly what this should be trending at. One of the last parts as well that's really critical is timing. Timing and velocity is, as many CFOs would love to hear you say is, if I give you $1, how much will you give me back? And the follow-up question to that is when, and can you repeat it again? So it's really essential to understand your life cycle and your buyer's journey. So, and that can be split between different sales segments as well. But understanding when you actually are spending dollars in these demand programs, how long does it take to generally create pipeline, and then pipeline turning into revenue as well. Establishing that timing now gives you the lay of the land for your racetrack, so you understand what you have to be doing in terms of speed, but you set the right expectations with stakeholders, so when you're giving you additional dollars, they don't expect that to have a return on investment overnight. And you set the right strategy to be able to optimize, and also look at the early warning indicators as well as your end results to truly understand what's working there. Okay, next up, pit crew roles. This one is essential because in any good racing team, you need to have your various team members that understand what their role is. And I've categorized this into 3 different groups. Number one is the funnel roles. So these are the roles that understand and work towards prospecting your leads, they're qualifying your leads, they're closing them. These are essential roles. These are the roles that take those initial contacts and turn them into real opportunities for you. So those funnel roles are essential. Program roles, second part to this, is the actual team that helps acquire those leads and prospects. They're the ones that are focused on looking at acquisition. How many leads are they acquiring? They're looking at conversion rate. How many leads have been accepted by the funnel roles, by the prospecting team, and how quickly can they accelerate those? And then the third group I put here is the tactical roles. These are the ones that look specifically at the individual tactics that you're delivering, whether you're actually choosing a channel such as paid search, or you're doing a field marketing face-to-face event. These tactical roles are the ones that take and learn from the high-level objectives, strategies, and then go execute against that with the tactical side. Now, these teams are essential because all these teams, and if you identify them and understand what their roles are, then you can hold them accountable for what's producing the right results. To have a mixed group of teams where someone is doing the lead generation, but they're also responsible to actually qualify it, that's where you have people out of their swim lanes. And teams need to really understand and focus on their roles because they understand what their swim lanes are, and they can be optimized towards that. Next up, we have throughput capacity. This is about truly understanding what the output of your engine can produce. And a very simple way, I'll say this. It's about understanding for when you're working with sales teams, how many leads do they really need? Because that's a question that we'll hear from both sales and marketing all the time is, can I get more leads? So spending the time to be able to truly quantify and understand how many leads does an average rep need per day, per week, per month to produce X amount of pipeline. And then as you build that, you back into it by understanding from a digital perspective, it's challenging to be able to get down to a leads per day simply because of the way inventory works, and digital can be high and low during the week. What I found often is it's very straightforward to produce a weekly and even a monthly lead per rep, so that when you're actually delivering these programs, you can monitor it and you can compensate for the highs and lows and the buying cycles during a given day and even during a given week. But being able to drill down, this is a simple analogy, a simple formula here really, to understanding how many calls per day, average calls per day, per number of reps will deliver how many leads that they need, they can call on to produce X amount of pipeline. So throughput capacity is essential. And this is something that you don't necessarily need a business analyst to discuss. You can back into it by understanding and delivering on your conversion rates, and back into it from revenue all the way back into pipeline and then number of leads. But building this is critical to be building it with your inbound sales team or with your sales partners as well. Okay, time for another brain tease here. We'll take a quick pause. Next question here is, can any of you out loud name this band? And I'll tell you this, if you can name the band, the correct answer is not that this is Nickelback. The correct answer is, I don't know who this band is. Okay, just trying to keep everyone safe on the streets out there. When asked about if you know this band, the correct answer and the safe answer is, I don't know. Food for thought. Okay, next up, wheel alignment. This one is critical, just as it is in any car. All of us that have to actually go in and get our alignment in place, you can see how much the car is drifting. This actually has significant impact on the business, especially when you're working between different organizations, whether it's marketing and then sales. And so what this is specifically focused on is right now, when you're looking at it from an enterprise perspective or even small to medium business, commercial aspects as well, it's these target account lists. How are you actually focused on target account lists? How are you building those target account lists? And I've separated these into target account lists and focused accounts. Because in general, if you ask and you build a target account list, sales can give you kind of their whole patch or their whole area of focus, which is great. You want to understand those named accounts that you're going after. Focused accounts is what I call, it's the ones that the reps are truly focused on. These can be your tier 1 ABM. These can be the ones that are actually your reps are focused on knowing the majority of their revenue is going to come in from these accounts. And so being able to understand kind of the general logos that you're going after versus the actual accounts that the reps are going to be focusing on in that quarter, that is essential. And what I mean by the next part is that's right hand meet the left hand, because this is what often happens, as I've experienced, is as you go out and deliver against these target account lists, you'll find halfway through the quarter or even after 30 days of activity, some of your sales reps may be shifting their focus somewhere else, where they realize instead of going after these 20 accounts, they're going to make a majority of their revenue in a couple of whales. And so really about the focus here is you have to ensure that it's not a set it and forget it. It's not a one and done. When you set those target accounts, you have to have a motion, specifically if you have an account-based marketing motion, where it is a joint handoff, where you are doing and actively working these accounts together, where the right hand knows exactly where the left hand is, so that when you get to the end of the quarter, you don't go, oh, sales was focused on landing new logos, but I was actually trying to build you some more expansion dollars over here. So being able to really have the right concessions during a weekly session, making sure you're proactively aligned with the sales team in terms of where their focus is, that's critical for success. Next up then we have, it's mechanics. And what I'll say about this one is this is where we have very a specific focus, especially on how do we create fundamentals that are disciplined and well organized, so that we truly have a muscle where everyone feels like they have a clear understanding of what their job and their role is. This is culminating all of the topics that we've discussed already as well, where someone truly owns and has a feeling of ownership of end-to-end lead life cycle, where they're looking at how are they delivering these leads? Are they the right quality of leads? Are they making it to the sales team? Is the sales team working them correctly? Truly understanding and having someone that's accountable to that they own it end to end. Where I've encountered in several organizations is that you have a shared ownership where 3 or 4 teams could own the volume of leads. They could own the conversion rate. They could own the pipeline number. But really having one person that's the one accountable throat to choke and says they're responsible to deliver X amount of leads, to deliver this much pipeline. Those are where the core tenets are coming together for companies that really are able to hone in and focus on this priority area of the funnel, which is that end-to-end ownership there. Also, what's critical in these mechanics as well is having one single source of truth, where you don't have marketing and sales with the different optics set, where marketing comes and says we've overperformed and sales says you underperformed. Really getting your business intelligence and your analytics groups together and focusing truly on what is the actual source of truth, so we're all operating under the same game plan. We have the same insights as well. That's critical. And as you'll experience today, we have many organizations that are also a part of this Demand Gen Summit that are exceptional at this. Some of my good friends, both at Domo on the business intelligence side and Zant on the lead development side, have phenomenal tools that help build not only visibility and transparency into how these programs are performing, but they also serve as a great collaboration piece so that everyone can truly understand and be working off one critical playbook. Lastly, I'll say on that too is it is critical to have and lock in leadership support. Having a leadership aligned and understanding what the true value and what the focus of this organization is in terms of being able to generate pipeline is key. Like making sure leaders have a vested interest in it, that they can see that where this is where the optics come into play even more, where they can see how those leads are producing pipeline, whether those leads were directly handed off to the sales team or their sales is able to go hunt into those leads. This is where we have a true opportunity to be able to help leadership understand the value of demand generation and where it's coming from in terms of their revenue. Okay, a couple more here, 2 more. So adding spotters. Now, I love this one because this is really about the problems that we're trying to solve. They're not necessarily unique to each of the companies that we're with. And a lot of times we feel that way. We feel like, well, my company's different. We're a little bit, we have to nuance this over here. We do something different. The reality is in terms of a lead to marketing funnel, they're very common. And so whether you have unique individual nuances to that, that's fine. But what my highest encouragement is ensure that you're looking and leveraging outside analysis and reports as well. And there's a host of them. You can use McKinsey data, Serious Decisions, but leverage those external analysts, because while they may not be an exact match or fit for what you're doing, it's a great asterisk to have. It's a starting point. It helps you establish a baseline. It helps in any conversation where you're trying to have a referee negotiate, well, where do we stand in this, whether it's supporting spending more in marketing or less in marketing. It's great to be able to understand and bring third-party analysts in that will literally look at your company from a revenue band standpoint, see your employee size, to look at your market cap, to look at many factors that help them understand and say, here's your baseline. This is what your average cost per lead should be. This is what your average conversion rate should be along interstage conversion rates. And so it's really important to not only, of course, understand and leverage your own internal data, but leverage these external analysts. Also, as many of you are deploying your MarTech stack, those MarTech vendors have clients in similar roles and positions as you. So leverage your vendors. Leverage your vendors to say, hey, someone else that's using your product that's in my industry, whether it's B2B SaaS or it's retail or it's B2C, ask them to make an introduction. Ask them to show how their other companies are using their technology, and then you can get a peek and insight into their playbook as well. But leverage those vendors for that. Leverage those vendors to kind of build a connective tissue with you and potential other comrades in the space. Same with leveraging the community, whether that's statewide, nationwide. I found more often than not that any potential demand leaders and or people working inside of sales organizations, they're more than happy to be able to have a conversation around that work world. We're all trying to solve the same problems. And if I can ever, I always tell people, I've cut my teeth on a lot of these programs so that no one else has to. So if there's ever an opportunity to be able to help others that are standing up these programs or want optimizations, I found significant leverage and importance from the community as well. So I'd encourage you to do that as well. Then lastly here, this is my man on the right, Joanne the Rock Johnson, the pride of Polynesia. This is diversity. And so what I mean by this is very simple. It's been proven in data, even there's a recent article in Forbes that talks about the success of companies as they bring on and hire more diverse talent. And the reality is, this isn't about necessarily diversity and inclusion. It's about being able to understand and really attract your global customer base, which is represented by a very diverse set of both culture, people, individuals, thoughts, and ideas. And so where I've kind of broken this out is into a couple different areas. First, looking at diversity of markets. Demand is shifting into emerging markets. Companies need to be able to find their way into those. And so for me, this is about growing not only just the middle class, but also new markets that represent the rest of the world in terms of digital growth opportunities. So that portfolio is highly exciting to be able to go after those emerging markets. And with that, it requires talent and representation from those diverse markets. Second to that is diversity of customers. These customer demographics and attitudes are constantly changing. They are empowered through technology with greater choice, increasingly a diverse customer base that expects better personalization of products and services, which comes back to us as marketers, is how do we go attract these diverse companies and their buyers and their champions? We have to be able to employ that through leveraging the insights and knowledge of a diverse team. And one of the things that I love actually hearing too is not even outside of race, gender, it's about diversity of ideas. Digital technologies we know and the ever-growing MarTech stack, which grows exponentially yearly, it's about hyperconnectivity. It's about deregulation. It's about disrupting traditional business value chains, and even the nature of competition and consumption in the digital era today. So I would say that few would argue against the need for rapid innovation, particularly how fast we have Moore's Law aggressively changing the landscape that we're working on. And so being able to have someone that has a different thought or idea versus the status quo from a technology standpoint changes on a dime, and it changes annually. And so I often love to say that even if I worked with a vendor that was 3 years ago, it's 3 years ago. 3 years ago is not last year, it's not this year. That vendor could have changed drastically in that time, as we've seen. So the diversity of those talents and ideas is critical, because similarly, there's a shift in the new context for leaders and companies that have honed their craft on diversity. They're truly addressing a global market that needs to be addressed, that is looking for representation, looking for personalization, and has exciting opportunities in these emerging markets where there's a significant amount of portfolio and revenue to be found. So recapping again, this is a very simple and straightforward analogy, I know, but it's something that I actually have found a lot of value in and understanding with both building existing or optimizing existing demand engines versus building a new one from the ground up. You can apply these principles in either one of those senses and truly be able to understand and take a diagnostic approach on a current system, or build something from the ground up and start with this as a phased approach. To me, this is one of the more exciting times to be a part of this wonderful world that we live in, especially given the challenge that we have in a truly virtual environment where the company needs the digital demand side to step up. They need to be able to reallocate budgets appropriately, structure those investments that drive true ROI for the business. And so for me, I think there's a great platform for demand marketers working together with their inside sales counterparts to truly move the needle forward and drive real business revenue and growth for the company. Again, my name's Rick Tolman. I'm happy to meet with any of you on LinkedIn and connect up. If any of you would like I said, I've cut my teeth on a lot of this so that no one else has to. I'd be happy to share any of these insights with any of you. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Demand Gen Summit. And please connect with me up on LinkedIn.